Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Pro Design Podcast. My name is Emmanuel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Ini.
Yeah, it's good to be back again. And we're back with a super guest. And today we're going to be chatting with Nate Langley. He's a lead product designer at Monzo Bank, where he's been instrumental in building the Good Collective and establishing the good design principle. I would not want to go into much details. I want him to introduce himself. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. Hi, Nate. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too, Emmanuel and Nini. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, so we're definitely going to get started talking to Nate. But just before we do, a few things to highlight is that one, his story has been compelling because Nate has spent time as a design manager before transitioning back to IC work. And if you're familiar with anything on landscape of design, we're seeing this kind of transition happen quite a bit. There are folks like Garen Enstrom, who is really preaching about super IC pathway. And quite frankly, it's just exciting to see designers embrace that line more, although I do have questions which we'll get into with Nate as well regarding like if everybody's switching to ICs, who's gonna manage the ICs after a while, but yeah, for today's conversation we're really going to focus on unpacking the metrics that matter in growth work. This is still part of our fifth drop that focuses a lot on metrics. And so where Nate is concerned, we really want to dig into how you can connect design decisions to be business outcomes. We want to go into practical tools, framework that Nate uses to navigate growth flywheel. And if you're already operating at this level where you're familiar with all of these things, then congratulations. At least you'd be able to take lessons and learnings from up-leveling your strategic thinking, because I think this conversation with Nate will be packed with a lot of insights. So Nate, let's get into it. You've been very instrumental in setting up the Growth Collective at Monzo, and you've also helped to establish the growth design discipline there. Can you walk us through what growth design means exactly to start from scratch? Like, what does that mean at Monzo?
Yeah, sure. First of all, to call out, like I helped set up the Growth Collective, but there's a small group of people who have been instrumental there, and I'm very lucky to work with some great, smart folks in design and growth. Yeah, so growth design at Monzo is, I mean, there's a lot of traditional kind of growth methods that we use, and I think the one that probably your listeners are most used to hearing about is like focusing on acquisition, activation, engagement, retention, and ultimately referral, that funnel piece. Those are things that we apply at Monzo. It's a relatively new discipline at Monzo. We have to be pretty foundational with the way we approach growth. However, we've done a lot of work around like the referral side of things, because word of mouth has been a huge lever for Monzo over the years. Like back in the day, we had our golden ticket referral scheme when we was in the beta program. The hot cold card is like our hero brand asset that people see in pubs, cafes, and out shopping. So people talk about it. It's a talkable asset, like an artifact that people talk about. So we know that word of mouth is a huge driver for us. And so referrals has been, over the past couple of years, like the Growth Collective has been 2 years old, I think. We've been focusing mainly on how we leverage those great word of mouth moments with referrals and incentivization. So whilst we clearly look at that full acquisition to retention funnel, referrals has been a huge focus and a big growth lever for us over the past couple of years. So I'll dive into a little bit what like referrals is. So for Monzo, so it's like we've been focusing a lot on like how we drive incremental word of mouth growth. So what I mean by that is like there's always going to be word of mouth growth, but like how do we drive that more incrementally through incentivization and referrals? So as I said, like our brand, we're very lucky to have a very distinctive brand and a very distinctive position for a bank, which is much different to especially the legacy banks, but also some of our direct neobank competitors. So we kind of have that word of mouth growth already. Referrals is a way to sort of like leverage those conversations with people in the pub or in the coffee shop or their family dinner table moments, where we go, people are always going to be talking about us because of our brand, but also our product experience is great. I'm obviously biased, but it is a great product experience. So people are going to be talking about us, as well as obviously our product offering. So we want to go, well, actually, how do we get into those conversations? So if you're recommending it to your parents, if you're recommending it to your friends, how do we get into those conversations and go, not only is this a great product experience, or isn't this different for a bank, but they also offer an incentive, like that's the sweetener, that's the kicker to get people through the door. So we've been focusing a lot on like what's the right incentive, what's the right funnel for that referrals process. But what makes it distinctly Monzo is how we bring the brand and craft and product thinking within that journey too. So we do, like I said, we run small iterative experiments on like what's the right incentive, like how do we position this right throughout that journey. But also we carve out space for like bigger, much more delightful bets as well. So we think about like once we've done some smaller work on that referrals funnel, we think about like, okay, what's the next level up? Like where do we apply more delight here? Where do we leverage our brand in this journey too? So going back to the referral work, it's not just chasing a lower CAC, which is a cost to acquiring a customer, but we also treat it as a brand moment. So this is a rare, generally like banking has been seen as a traditionally dry, potentially drab kind of experience, but we're trying to apply our own sort of like different way of talking and thinking about a bank in those moments, and that it could potentially be an absolute make or break moment for Monzo, where if you imagine like you're speaking to your parents about like, hey, I've got this great savings rate with Monzo, and they're like, oh yeah, Monzo, but isn't that like a kid's card, or like isn't it like a young person's card? And they're like, no, give it a go. And you refer them through our referrals program, and it's either way too out there for a parent, like way too flashy and pink or hot coral and whatnot, or it's just not the best experience. And equally, like that's something we have to get right for our core cohorts, our core audience as well. So we obviously do skew slightly younger. So if we're not fulfilling that brand promise that people have seen around them, like we are different, but if we're not like fulfilling that brand promise, like people will be like, that's not what I expected. So growth design at Monzo is like foundationally, it's like the traditional ways of like growth design, as a lot of your guests have spoken about and you speak about really well in your socials and on this podcast. But also like it's about like how do we add that level of brand and craft, and how do we create the space in that, which we'll talk about as well.
I think just a quick follow up. I think you answered a bit of it, but sometimes I'm always just curious to understand perspective, right? Traditionally, it feels like a traditional marketing approach, like good marketing approach. So I think the question for me is that when you think about growth generally, right, and how it is right now, Monzo, how are you guys working together effectively, like with good marketing and good design? Like how is that being? Because I see you mention more of the time the brand perspective, which I think that comes in play. How do you guys partner effectively with good design and good marketing?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's and something I feel uniquely positioned with my career and my experience so far to talk to. Over the past year, we've actually merged the growth product part of Monzo and the marketing collective. So we're now one collective, and having had like a lot of experience I was at the Co-op before. I've worked with marketing and digital advertising agencies in the past too. I understand that there's always that kind of conflict, and especially in growth. So bringing those two worlds together and working super closely together is only a good thing. So it's similar to the way like I've been at Monzo for 3 years, and the thing that really blew my mind when I joined Monzo is that brand design and product design are in effectively the same discipline. So we've got graphic designers and brand designers and motion designers who are mixing with us in our discipline rituals, and it kind of that osmosis of experience and expertise really just helps you level up as a designer. And it's the same with merging these two collectives together. So growth product and growth marketing are now one unit, and we hang out together. Like we literally just talk, we socialize, And that osmosis of expertise and information, it just naturally happens. So AJ and Nima, who are so Nima's like the director of product, and AJ's like the VP of marketing at Monzo. They lead our rituals and they talk a lot, and they've got a super close relationship, and that attitude then trickles down into how we work. So yeah, we're especially when we're talking about like upper funnel, like conversion, like the website, like we're like I mean, we own technically. I guess I hate that term own, but the product. There's a product team or a product squad who maintain and own like the evolution of the website, and they've got marketing people embedded into their team. They've got content people embedded into their team. So last week we had an offsite for the whole of the growth and marketing product side, because there's some things we just needed to talk about. And there are marketing people there as well. They're there, they're giving their point of view and they're giving direction and stuff. So yeah, I hope that answer your question. I think like the bringing the two worlds a lot closer together, and also just socializing more together, right?
I definitely love it, and I think I also love the perspective that you have the brands guys and everybody coming together to become. I think maybe that's why it's called the Growth Collective. But I think that also talks so much about the way the craft level that we see for Monzo, right? Not separating the brand guys, the product guys, the marketing guys, and everybody working in silos. I think that really talks so much about the craft level and the visual appealing of what we see at Monzo. So I think that's a very good one. Yeah.
No, I wanted to just comment on the same to say that's exactly the setup I work in at Intercom. So it's been also very, I see the benefits of it to be working on upper funnel experiments or upper funnel things. And you've got the brand guys bringing that level, that bar of craft consistently. We've got motion guys embedded as well in the team, and then there is constant, like, there is no way you're doing anything on our website without the product marketing guys, without all of those people bringing input in. So yeah, I think more teams can do well from borrowing that approach as opposed to keeping things separate. And it's like, oh, this is because otherwise it's like your customers don't care or know what team's working on what, right? So nobody cares really.
Yeah. And the worst thing you can do for a customer is to ship your org chart, right? So if you can see the line between product and marketing on that funnel, like, it's just a shame. Just to build on my points as well, like in traditional product squads, you've got like that product triad of like engineering lead, design lead, product manager. But I actually find that I'm working a lot more with product marketing managers as well.
Yes.
In that spaces too. So like you might have like a quad. Would you call it quad? Yeah, four.
A quad makes more sense.
Yeah, a four, like a group of four, or sometimes it's me and the product marketing manager like jamming on some stuff, and then we bring it back to the engineering team. So it's very different. And like going back on like 5 or so years ago when I was at the co-op. And the co-op is a very traditional legacy organization, and part of the organization I worked for was very product focused, and they're trying to do a lot of business transformation stuff. And we really struggled to get like marketing buy-in, because there was literally physically a divide between us and marketing. Like literally you have to walk across the road to get to the marketing department, right? So I would take it upon myself. I was like, at the time while I was trying to grow the web team, and I would take it upon myself to go, well, I need input from marketing folks. So I would literally just take if they weren't coming to our stand-ups or show and tells or other rituals, I would go to them and say, look, this is what we're doing. And it building that bridge, like, paid us back dividends in the end. And we just, not only are you building that relationship, but you're bringing those two expertise together to have better customer experiences in the long run.
I mean, amazing. I think you talk so much about the partnership. So in your recent LinkedIn post, right, you talked about creating a growth design vision that's 6 months in horizon. So can you break down like your process in terms of creating like a growth vision, and what makes a growth vision different from like a broader product vision in itself, and probably just talk us into some of those testable hypotheses also.
So yeah, I'll start with breaking down the process for crafting the vision. So obviously we have business strategies and goals and targets that we need to hit, and those are communicated down to us pretty effectively. In fact, straight after this, I've got that one of those very sessions with the CPO and the Chief Financial Officer. So I'll be running straight to that after this. So we understand like the broader direction of where the business needs to go. And I'm lucky that a lot of user research, market trend analysis, as well as like we have quite a robust data science unit here as well. All of that feeds into the wider business strategy, as well as like where do we want to take this business. So that's where we start. Then we layer in our like collective wide or product wide insights and market trends that we have as well. So we've done there's bucket loads of research interviews and data points that we have, and we bring all of that stuff together. And what we usually do is that we start with the leads. So we have a smaller leads like chat, like this is where we think we need to go, and here's the key insights. And then we come up with some like rough high level hypotheses. And then once we've got like these really, they might be 8 or 10, so it's quite a lot, right? And we'll time box this as well. We say, okay, well, what's the next year looking like? What's our planning cycles looking like? So we work in 6 monthly planning cycles. So is this going to take us to 6 months? And based on where we know the business wants to go, or would it take us to 12 months? Then we take that whole sort of like time box, those insights, rough hypotheses that we've got to the team. And then we have a series of workshops where we go, okay, are these the right hypotheses that we want to focus on? Like that, we open them to challenge. We have like high trust, so like they trust us, but we also trust them to come back and go, actually, that's not quite right. And then in that same session, we'll do some like rough ideation or put in a bit more detail around those hypotheses. What can we do to solve this hypothesis? Like that kind of thing. And towards the end of that session, then we'll have like a fairly tried and tested impact versus effort matrix. If we find that we've probably run out of time, or we need some more like high level guidance from like some of the collective leads, then we'll bring them in at this point, and then we prioritize them based on impact, confidence and effort. And again, a lot of this is, I want to briefly talk about like how quickly we do this stuff. This could be over a couple of days, right? So something I really want to get across in this conversation is like a lot of this is like speed to insight or pace to learning. Like how do we quickly get to prove out the hypothesis or learn towards the hypothesis? So this can happen over a couple of days. And then by the end of that couple of days, we've got like a strategy effectively for like the next 6 to 12 months. We have these key hypotheses. We've got like some ideas that can ladder up into those hypotheses, and ultimately like we have our North Star metrics, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And then it's on me. Then I go and take all of that information together. We probably refined it down to like 3 to 6, depending on like how big or small the effort is of these hypotheses. And then it's on me. I will then take that away, and then I will then craft those into like 2 or 3 key screens of like specific parts of the customer touch points. And the reason why I do this is because we'll go into detail about this later. The reason why I do this is because I find that vision's really good at a few things. Getting buy-in from leadership. So once I've got those 2 or 3 screens per hypothesis, or I might even have 1 screen showing like a key point. And then usually it's a deck, obviously. You have like here's your screen, or here's your sort of few moments of that customer touch point or that customer journey, out with like, here's our hypothesis and this is the metric we think it's going to move. This is why we're doing it. And yeah, before that, we would have probably like sense checked this with leadership. So we work super out in the open, super transparent. One of our principles at Monzo is default to transparency, because it's really important that any surprises are headed off at the pass, so to speak. Where I would have like after about probably takes a little bit longer. So it probably takes 3, 4, maybe a week to craft some of those screens, given all the other stuff I've got going on. So, but then we'll have, and I'll be like keeping the team up to date. Is this the kind of like thing you was expecting with this idea? Like what's your build? Maybe like if they're not kind of like too sure about the idea that I've developed or the vision that I've developed, we'll have a separate jam session to refine that. And obviously I'm bringing leadership in But like by the end of the week, we should have like a clear artifact with some core moments of our journey to go, okay, this is the vision, and this is where we are. This is our North Star for a team, and for the team, and for the next 6 to 12 months. And we'll then take that around leadership. Leadership go, yeah, great, cool. We've been part of that process. We believe you. We trust you. But then we can then go and speak to the wider design discipline. We're going to speak to the wider growth collective, present in all hands, go, this is what we're going to do. If you've got any issues or challenges or questions, like here's where we are. And then that's it. It's off. It's off. And then we go and deliver on it. And the thing that I think separates a growth design vision from like a product design vision is how quickly we develop that. Like it turns around pretty quickly. Like we're not spending loads of time on analysis. We're not spending loads of time in crafting full user journeys or something like that. So it's a fairly quick turnaround. We're not visualizing the whole journey. And then the next thing is that we're not beholden to that vision. Like we'll talk about like how we then slice that into like separate hypotheses, or we take those hypotheses and develop them. But we're not beholden. If we find that a hypothesis isn't working out as well as we should do. We had high confidence in this hypothesis. We had this data and insight backing us up, but actually we've put it out in the app and it's not working, or we put it in the funnel, it's not working. So then that would take us down another route. In my experience with product work, a lot of the experiments in product design is de-risking a big idea you've already had. And the difference is with the growth design vision, the experiments you do is more about learning. And we are this didn't work out as well as we should. How do we pivot? How do we go on to the next thing? That kind of thing.
Cool, I like that. The risking from learning. So those are like two different approaches. I think I love that.
My head's been spinning with so many questions at different points in time. Honestly, I think first one for me would be, you've been very detailed with how the process looks like for you. But I'm also wondering, in an environment where perhaps it's top down, where the vision is set, which I feel like is a lot of environments, quite frankly, where vision work is set and you've got the team with potentially brilliant ideas of ways in which that vision, because at the end of the day, it's the team that's like closer to the ground level work and the user insights and those type of things, right? What would be your advice for that kind of team in that scenario about how they could perhaps begin to contribute in some way to the top-down vision that's coming across?
Yeah, this is another thing I like talking about a lot as well. So thanks for asking that. So I want to acknowledge my privilege in working at a fairly we are a design-led business, and design has a lot of trust and autonomy to the point where designers not only like I was listening to a podcast with Mig Reyes, the Duolingo guy, and he said like Duolingo, that we didn't have to fight for a seat at the table. We built the table. Design built the table, and that's kind of what it's like at Monzo. So I want to acknowledge that, like, not only like I have a privilege in being in a very design-led organization, but I've been in this game for 20 years and it's not been the case at all in a lot of my career. So I've had to learn how to be a lot more pragmatic when I talk about like vision and design in previous jobs. So I think that's like leading with pragmatism is probably going to be the thing that I want like listeners to take away with. Like it's not a case of like fighting against like well-entrenched processes or well-entrenched hierarchical frameworks or structures that's been there for years, right? If you want change to happen, you kind of need to be able to understand the landscape, adapt to the landscape, figure out what your leverage points are. So a lot of my roles, I've had to go, okay, and I've been there, right? I've been that designer where I'm like, why aren't they listening to me? Like we're close to the customer, we understand the customer, and we know who they are. I've actually spoken to them, they haven't, kind of thing. And especially as a growth designer, you have to have a bit more of a business mind. Like you have to understand like where we're going as a business, and if anything, you kind of like your mindset shifts a little bit more to that side of the spectrum, with obviously keeping an eye on like the user and customer insight as well, and speaking to them. But if you kind of like understand like where the business is going and where these business decisions are coming from, and have empathy for that, right? Because these people aren't going to be actively against the users or the customers, right? The whole point is that if you create a great product that customers want to use, then they're going to buy more, right? They're going to buy your stuff more, they subscribe more, they use your service more. So they're not trying to actively be anti-customer, right? It's just that sometimes, especially from our point of view, it feels like that. So maybe get to the crux of like where those business decisions are coming from. Have empathy for the people who are usually the messengers or the people that are creating those visions. And then, especially in the early days of that relationship, kind of like swim in their lane for a bit. Swim with them, walk in their shoes, get to know them, get to know who they are. That sounds really sort of like soft skills right now, but it kind of is. And then once you understand where they're coming from and you can kind of like design for them and help them deliver on their vision, then you've got the trust and you've built the relationship. And then you can start to go, oh, cool, well, that works. That might not have worked last time, but what about this? I've actually spoken to a customer and they've said this. And you can start to feed in customer insight. You can start to talk about customer. So it's not about just coming in and go, well, we need to speak to customers. We need to interview people. We need to apply more of brand here, and we need to spend more time polishing this experience because it's the high value touch point. Come in like a bull in a china shop. It's like, okay, no, how can I empathize with these people? Because as designers, we're very good at empathizing with customers or users and people that use our services and buy our stuff. But we're not very good at like turning our empathy back into the business and thinking about what are these people doing and what motivates them, and what motivates them to be like make these business decisions. Almost do like turn your process internally and do like a design project internally as well. That's what when I've mentored or led people, I always think like, also turn your empathy inwards.
I definitely agree very much on the empathy level. I think we, like you said, we're very good at the user empathy part, but when it comes to our stakeholders and the people that are in the work with us, it's almost like, oh, hey, nobody wants to listen to us. When there are ways in which, if you just figure out, I mean, a tactic that I like to use a lot is drop in user insights and conversations of things that I found recently or things that I've discovered from sales calls and things like that. And very quickly you become the person that is associated, like you just create that mental picture of like, oh, if you talk to this person, you know that it's almost like they're the voice of the customer. Yeah, and that's a nice way to not necessarily like you said, bull in a china shop, just like you will listen to what we've got to say. So
that's it, exactly that. Yeah,
Referrals are a big thing that got shipped recently at Monzo, and you also made mention of it in your intro. So, what are the questions that you guys anchored on that inform your design thinking, that kind of help you to shoot for the goals for that project or for the experiment? And what are the metrics that you guys focused on measuring the success of your learning?
like I said, acquisition is super important for Monzo. We are 6th, 7th, 8th largest bank in the UK, and we want to obviously be bigger, introduce a better way of banking for more people in the UK. But we have ambitions beyond the UK in the EU and US too. So that's no secret. So acquisition is a huge drive for us. So a lot of our focus is on acquisition. So when like referrals is obviously a key touch point and a key lever for acquisition. So when we talk about like what questions do we use to inform our design thinking, it is really like, is this going to incrementally get us more users? Is this and that's fundamentally it. Like, is this going to get us more users? We are asking different questions now. So we've been 12 months, I think, on this journey. Well, actually less than that. October last year, we started this referrals journey. So we've had 6 months of pure acquisition. Now we're looking at shifting those conversations to more like, what can we do to drive more engagement with those acquired customers? So it's not just about like getting more people through the door. It's like, how do we turn those into quality referrals? How do we turn those into quality customers? So whilst it looks good for like your top line metrics, acquisition can also be like, well, I've got my £20 and now I'm off, see you later kind of thing. So that's something we've learned, and we knew that as we embarked on this journey, but we wanted to make sure that we're getting the right mix of like CAC and the right mix of like incremental. So we've done a lot of geo tests. So like we understand that incremental value that referrals have now. So and we needed to have those early experiments first. So the early experiments was really about like, is this going to drive a referral? Is this going to drive more customer acquisition? Now this conversation is like, is this going to drive a quality referral? And what we mean by quality is probably touching on like guardrail metrics as well. Are they like 7-day weekly actives? Are they taking up a product? Are they transacting? That kind of thing. And that we have like metrics that measure those as well. So then quality becomes more about like depth of engagement later on. So, and that's another thing that we are monitoring now. So now we've got our CAC, we understand our incremental value of referrals, and now we're trying to understand how those referrals then go on to have a lifetime value with Monzo. So, yeah, LTV is the next question for us.
Quick follow up to that. You referenced as in point, like there are basically, because I literally have the referral section of the app open right now.
Oh no.
So, and there are a couple of things I do want to call out. Like, first of all, I think Monzo's been absolutely fantastic for years when it comes to content design. There is nothing I look forward to more than just seeing how like UX writing plays in the app. It's like this, like how referrals work. A magician doesn't usually reveal their secrets, but I think it's fantastic. And it's that thing where you just sound human, right? You're talking to a regular person as opposed to product speak that we find. Anyway, so yeah, in breaking this down, it's like your friends having 30 days to do XYZ, and there's like a bunch of like your referral, they have to use your link, they download, they add money, and then pay for something using Monzo. And I imagine like it sounds pretty simple in terms of like the steps on how many things that someone's got to do. But I'm also just curious what happens when they drop off at any point in time. Are there things around like how do you recapture such? Because I'm curious. This is maybe nosy now. I'm just curious how that is mapped out. Like, okay, say I've tapped on the link, I did download Monzo. Maybe between adding money and actually paying for something. Well, I feel like if you add money, you will likely pay for something. It makes sense. So, but maybe before adding money, I don't follow through. Like, how do you track those engagement impacts, both on the referrer's side and on the referred side, if that makes sense?
Yeah. We use the terms referrer and referee. I don't know if that's the right terms, because a referee is somebody who referees sport. That's what we use internally for some reason. Great questions, and we're still on the journey of really understanding that better and more holistically. Ultimately, once that bottom sheet pops up and they go off to WhatsApp or either an email, we don't know what happens next. We have like almost no visibility of if that person has shared it or not, which is it threw up a really interesting design problem that did, because obviously design heuristics is like you want to give feedback to the system. I think that's the term that Nielsen used, like feedback on the system that something's happening. But we literally don't know. We can't. All we know is that the bottom sheet's been opened. That's the only thing we get back. So they could have gone off. They could have just spoken the code out. Somebody, we have no idea. But what happens is that when that person clicks on that link and they put their phone number in the link, and then they sign up, they have to put their phone number in again, which feels a bit counterintuitive, but we've got an attribution. And so in the sign-up process, we go, okay, we've got this number and it matches this number they've just entered in sign-up. So then we serve a screen saying, hey, you're a referral. You've used the referral link. Carry on going, and you'll get to your, I think if you're looking at the variable reward, then it's £10 to £50. You'll get your mystery prize kind of thing. So in that moment, we're kind of like leaning on behavioral psychology. It's like we've given you like feedback, system feedback. we're also going, hey, like we know sign-ups long, we're a bank, we have to be compliant, right? But you'll get there once you've completed the steps and fulfilled the eligibility criteria. Keep on going. So it's almost like a little bit more of a carrot of like an incentive to keep on going. And then, so have you referred anybody in, E?
I did refer my sister when she moved to the UK. So yes.
Okay. When was
So
that?
she and her husband. Oof, that's like 2-3 years ago now.
Okay. So my changes would have been in there. But
Yeah.
so what we do is that we can then give you like a insight on say you've invited Emmanuel, we can give you insight on like at what stage Emmanuel's in the process.
Nice.
So we know that somebody's accepted your referral. We know that Emmanuel has added his phone number and sign up. So we go, okay, this is Emmanuel. And then in the referrals hub, we go, okay, Emmanuel started sign up. And then we can then go, hey, after a few days later, Emmanuel's not finished sign up.
Good nudge them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're a few steps away from having the nudge button. But anyway, so, yeah. And then once he's completed sign up, you'll get that feedback in the referrals hub too. So at each of those sort of milestones, we can say, so we're giving you that system insight, because like you could be in for 50 quid, Emmanuel could be in for 50 quid. So all of a sudden, it's like an incentive to go, actually, I want you to complete it.
No, I love that. That is so brilliant. And you know what? When I think about like how AI is evolving very quickly, just to quickly segue, perhaps this is one of the use cases that from a growth design perspective, I'm actually excited about. Because like you said, once they go off the system, there really isn't much that you can do. I mean, you can have the feedback systems that you've put in place, but yeah, that could very well be the end of that journey, as opposed to, I mean, and it's going to sound like a lot of like privacy invasion, but I still find it exciting, quite frankly. I don't know if you've seen Cobot.
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So it's not yet in the market, but you can download it right now, but all you're going to get is like a welcome screen, which I think by itself is so delightful just from a product design perspective. But yeah, the whole point of this is that it is an AI personal assistant that just hops on everything that you do across all apps. There's continuous context. So the idea of personal super intelligence and continuous context, I think there are use cases potentially that will be helpful for growth designers and the way we perhaps design for the future. So just a thought.
Yeah, great. I'll look into that. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so still talking about metrics, right? The referral program, what were the guardrail metrics that were in place? Like, we absolutely cannot screw this up. So for example, like I've obviously not participated in this particular referral program since it's shipped, but the one I was referencing with my sister, I think it was like just £20. And the minute she signed up, I don't even think she had to spend money, but once she signed up, once her husband signed up, I got my money, right? Yeah, and I'm wondering, for this one, are there guardrail metrics that have now been put in place, and how did you decide which ones were absolutely essential to track?
Yeah, there's 2 points in that. The first one is about pure guardrail metrics, pure like health metrics. Are we on the right track? Are we actually impacting our top line metrics? Are we impacting any kind of like 7-day actives, or are people actually so confused they're calling up or speaking to us in customer operations, you know? And the second thing is around eligibility criteria. So like, how do we set the conditions for that person to go, not just come in and get the 20 quid and go? Like, so I feel like there's two points there. Let me talk about the second one first and clear that up, and then we'll go to the guardrail metrics and answer your question there. So back last year we had for as long as we've had a referrals program, I think it was like £5. Like each of you got £5. If you refer to Manuel, he'll get £5, you'll get £5. But he still had to like activate his card and do a transaction. Now we've experimented with like the incremental value of what referrals means to us. Now we have a much better understanding of like cost of acquisition, for cost of acquiring that customer. So we believe that we've got a bit more headroom. So we've upped it to, I think the baseline was £10, but we've also experimented with higher ones, and we also have a variable incentive, which is a lever that we've got out live at the moment. So you complete your criteria and you get £10, or you could get £50, or you could get 20 quid. And there's like a probability calculator in that, very simple probability calculator. We've realized that like the higher the incentive, the more likely people are just going to come in and get the money and go. So we're starting to put like controls in place to go, okay, right, well, this person comes in, but you probably have to spend 3 times on your card now rather than 1 time. So we're starting to play around with different types of eligibility criteria to see if we can increase the value of that person and showcase more of like, and capture them a little bit longer to showcase the value of Monzo so they don't just drop off. But there's still a lot of questions in that. Now, talking about guardrail metrics, we are obviously concerned, like we have our top line metrics of acquisition, and we have like activation and completion. Those are our top line metrics. But in terms of health metrics and guardrail metrics, the ones that we monitor really closely is like if people are calling up we call them COPs, like customer operations internally. People are speaking to those, they're complaining. Maybe they haven't received their reward, or they don't understand the proposition. So that's happened. If anything, we've actually seen a small rise in complaints recently, because variable reward is obviously a little bit more harder to wrap your head around. So I've got some plans in place to make that clearer using content design. So those are the guardrail metrics that we really look at.
Yeah, so just around that, I think you touched about the guardrails. So let's tie it back to design decisions, right? How do you then tie the specific design decision to the metrics that matters to the business? So let's maybe apart from the referral now, other aspect of the business in itself.
Yeah, so I think it's like the questions are wrapped up in the hypotheses. So the hypotheses are the questions that we're asking effectively. So all of our hypotheses should ladder up into what those top line metrics are. And if they're not laddering up, then you're not doing the right thing. Like it's as simple as that. So we ensure that we're taking a very business point of view, and we're as we're asking these questions and talking about these hypotheses, they have to be solving for those top line metrics. For example, to use referrals, like if you're not thinking about customer acquisition, then it's not the right thing to work on. And it's not we don't bin it. We like think about like where this could be applied elsewhere in the product or in the funnel. So we've got like a whole icebox and car park of great ideas that just probably don't ladder up into our top line metrics. So you constantly, and I learned this from an old product director we worked with at Monzo. She was from Spotify. Because it's really easy when you're in that ideation or that hypothesis generation phase of just getting really bogged down in solution and going, yeah, this is, and being attached to the design, being attached to the solution. Like ladder back up to the hypothesis and then ladder back up to the metric. Like, so you need to almost like switch like your altitude during that sort of like hypothesis definition period to go, okay, well, let's come back out. Is this the right question that we're asking? Is this laddering into the right metric? Okay, cool, it is. Let's go back down again. Because it is easy. Like we're curious people. Designers are curious people. We want to go and solve problems. So it's easy to go down a rabbit hole and go, actually, this is, and then before you know it, you've wasted your time, and you wasted leadership's time. Or in the worst case scenario, you've got leadership buy-in and you're off building stuff, and then it's like 6 months later you realize that you're not laddering up to, you're not moving any metrics.
Okay, let's talk about speed to learning versus polish. Right. You've mentioned just being pragmatic about like tools that are available to you and focusing on pace to learning. Like, how do you decide what level of polish is needed for an experiment versus when you can ship something basic so you can learn?
Yeah, sure. So after we've had that sort of like vision setting piece, like the vision usually is like a slice of highly polished part of the customer journey, right? So that's highly polished. And the thing that I like to communicate with, and that's getting a lot of like good buy-in from like design leadership and brand leadership to go, okay, we trust you to go and deliver great design, right? And then the next thing I need to then help those folks go through is like the first few iterations of this isn't going to look like that, right? It's probably going to look a little bit more rough and ready. But I'm in a very privileged position where I've got a very robust design system and a very robust set of brand guidelines that I can just pull these things in and go for it. So like in the first few instances, especially with those smaller bets, it is a little bit more rough and ready than I'd like. I mean, if you as a customer, you probably won't notice much difference really, because we have these foundational points. So, but there are moments that I'd like to polish. So taking a pragmatic approach and getting, and this is one I really want, like people who are just starting out in growth design or even starting out in product design, like this pace to learning will unlock so many doors for you in the future. So if you go, okay, well, you know what, this isn't, I can see this could be a better experience. But if I can just go, okay, we need to get this out, we need to learn. And I think this is the okay bar. And I mean, you need to kind of calibrate that over the course of your career, because it's really easy to get bogged down into design decisions and back and forth with your engineers, and you're kind of like fighting over the small details. Whereas like sometimes it's better to just go, okay, well, cool, I know we can iterate on that. If this experiment is a success, then we can go and iterate on that and polish it. An example I've got of this is the variable reward, where it was very sort of like, okay, we've got a table to explain the probabilities, and we've got to utilize the kind of the frameworks that we've already got. But I managed to like the polish that I could get there was like, ask a favor of a brand designer, can you create me a new illustration? And like, because he was working on something anyway, he was like, yeah, I'll do that. So I got the little box with the magic box, and that was quite cool. But it was leaning into stuff that we already had. But obviously we found out that was something that customers are interested in, and it was trending positive. So, and this is not me, this is my PM. I'm gonna admit something right now. My PM turned to me and is like, how can we make this experience more magical? I'm like, what? You're telling me? So wow, okay. Where we go? Because all the early results, I mean, we don't peak too early in results, but we had like it reached statistical significance, and we're like, okay, well, what's the next stage? And I had like all these other big bets going on. He's like, no, let's go back and polish that. I was like, that's what I should have said, not you.
I love that.
Yeah. So, and that goes back to what I said earlier. The stuff we decided to polish was actually like the moment that somebody claims that referral. So, going back to our scenario of Innie's referred Emmanuel's completed his eligibility criteria. You both get a notification going, now's the time to reveal your reward. And previously, we just had like, you've got 50 quid, Innie. Well done. Isn't that great? And it was just a notification, and then it got dumped into your activity feed, which is obviously still a lovely moment because you got 50 quid, or you might have just got £10. You went, £10 fine. But like, it was like, this is a real big brand moment. What can we do to make this incredible? So it actually, a while back, we had some like vision setting ideas. And one of the vision setting ideas was, wouldn't it be great if you could blow on your screen and something magical would happen? So I took that idea and I was like, this sounds absolutely wild, but I'm going to try and push it through. So I came up with this idea of like, you get a notification, you tap that notification, and a full sheet appears when you open the app, covered in confetti. Like if you've used Monzo for a while, you know that confetti is a big thing on Monzo. Covered in confetti, and there's a line at the top that says, blow on your screen to reveal your reward. And you can blow on your screen, and all the confetti will just like move away.
No way.
Yeah.
So
and I
cool.
spoke to the engineer, and they were like, yeah, we can do that. We just like leverage the microphone. We've got microphone permissions anyway from like, you have to do like a video and then sign up. So we've got that permission anyway. Yeah, we could do that. And you could also like rub it off as well. Oh, there's a button as well. So if you like, I'm not interested in that, or for you have access needs, you can press that button and it does it for you. And then it would be like, you've won £20. Well done. And it's a really, when I saw that, like there was a lot of back and forth and talk about physics, or we could talk about another time. But it was just like, when that worked, I was like, wow, that is probably peak of my career, getting people to blow on their screen. We only unlocked that because we had confidence in the variable reward scheme. So we had confidence that was the right thing to do. And so we've done smaller elements of polish, like design debt's been cleaned up, tech debt's been cleared up. So it's all the stuff that makes it work. But that was a real big hero brand moment that I'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, now I feel like I gotta go refer someone.
You got to now.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have Monzo, but I'm not sure I've signed
You
up.
don't
So
have Monzo? Okay, that's good. I'll refer you.
honestly, yeah. Cool. But I mean,
I'm moving our company metrics here by just being here.
yeah. I was thinking, blowing, but I was just thinking in terms of the physics. But I think that's the conversation for another day. So let's before we start wrapping up, like let's talk about like a field experiment. Like can you share like a field experiment that actually provided something like a valuable learning for you and for the team?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like we're spending a lot of time talking about referrals, but it is like the most tangible, the tangible experiments I've got front of mind. Yeah, sure. So the experiment that comes to mind is one of our first experiments, and we just inherited the system and the platform, and we're just figuring out what was working and what wasn't. And I set out this vision, and a core part of the vision was, and I've spoken about this before, about like the heuristics of design, which I keep on coming back to, of giving system visibility and feedback to the customer of like what's going on. So I briefly touched on earlier about like giving you understanding of like progress, but also like we had this idea, and it's mainly my idea, was to give you visibility of like the people that you pay regularly through Monzo, but we know haven't got Monzo. So our hypothesis was, if you show like people who you pay regularly, you're more likely to then go, well, they might as well be on Monzo, right? So we had this component that we showed on the referrals hub, which is like, you pay your mum a lot, you pay your plumber, or maybe your milkman a lot. So there's a mix of like, it was kind of a few things, but that was because we had to be pragmatic about what we were showing. We could, I think there was some criteria around we could actually get rid of businesses. So we knew it was just personal or people. But again, we couldn't have like a button on there, go and refer that person. We just had to show them. And it tanked our metrics. It completely tanked the metrics. Like people were just like not interested. And if anything, it got in the way of what people were there to do. And the referrals hub is a high traffic part of the app. So it's quite surprising. So we parked it because we started to see that people were like, why are you showing me this? And like this person I've spoken to like once in a year, or so there's probably so the learnings we got from that was we probably needed to have a bit more understanding of like, we need to have a bit more maturity in the system that we were using, if that makes sense. Like we was really at the early days. We didn't have the framework set up. But also, like, if we knew the system limitations earlier, we probably would have pushed that into the future a bit more, if that makes sense. And created a bit more of a richer experience. You can refer directly from that list of people, for instance, or like we'll give a bit more information about why we're showing you these people, or we just cut out like, okay, increase more eligibility criteria. You've paid this person 5 times in a month. Maybe it's I play football on the Thursdays with my mates, and I give him like the subs or something like that.
Yeah, I mean that all made a lot of sense, and I think that's one of the things I love about growth design. Is that room for learning that you could actually take that insight and optimize that experience again, and you could still get results. And I think that's one of the good of growth design for me.
Yeah, and the feedback is really quick. So we launched that. I think we only spent a couple of weeks on that, really, to got it out. So it was quite a tight turnaround with release trains and everything. But we was able to reach static fairly quickly, and then we could react to it fairly quickly, and we made a decision really quickly. And there's not many parts of product design which has that kind of feedback loop, that tight feedback loop.
Agreed. Okay, let's talk about my favorite part of this, which is you transitioning from being a manager. After 5 years, you said, been there, done that, thank you. Want to go back to being close to the work. I'm curious what drove that decision for you, and how did your management experience, if it did, and if it's a reach, please let us know, if your management experience was impactful in any way, like when you went back into the craft.
Yeah. So without this turning into my therapy session, I'll keep it quite light. So I joined like the management track in my previous role. So I was there for 5 years. I've been at Monzo for 3 years now, and I think I was a manager at Monzo for just over a year before I decided, probably 18 months before I decided that I should go back to being an IC. In my previous role, we didn't have this concept of like IC and manager. It's like if you wanted to progress, you needed to be more into management. And I had an epiphany moment at Monzo during my management career, which I'll talk about in a minute, where I was like, I feel like I entered into management a little bit too early for my career. And there was moments where, a lot of designers, myself included, have imposter syndrome. A lot of design is wearing our hearts on the sleeve a lot of the time. This is who we are, becomes our personality, rightly or wrongly. So it was a hard transition for me. And especially going from that company where I was established in a management career into Monzo, where it was almost like 10x. Like the bar was so high, the quality was so high, and the level of like conversation I was having was just on another level, absolutely another level. And I joined the core banking leadership team, and I was like, there was a guy who set up the data science function at Facebook. There was like the guy who'd basically been employee number 5 at Monzo. These were like my peers in the leadership circle, and I was like, I have got nothing to bring to this table. I'm drowning here, and they looked at me to give like design leadership, and I was like, wow, okay, like this is. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. And I kind of felt like like I said earlier, I joined the management track a little bit too early. I had a great time and I learned a lot, and also the other thing I want to talk about is I'm supposed to be leading these designers who are exponentially better designers than I am. They are great designers, right? Best in the world, some of them. Well, most of them are. All of them are. And I was like, how can I don't feel like I've got the legitimacy to give them the direction that they need. So, my confidence, I built my confidence was rock bottom at that stage. I was like, this is wild. But I knew I had something in me to give me like to keep me at Monzo. Obviously, I'm still there. And I built a lot of trust and built great relationships with my designers, and I leveled myself up as a design manager. And I did build my confidence up. And the thing that built my confidence up was actually growth design, because I was like, I'm really passionate about this, and I feel like we should do growth design at Monzo. And that's when I started writing proposal papers and putting it in front of the CPO and stuff like that. But anyway, there was a period in the early days of growth design when we was trying to hire for our customer acquisition squad, and we really struggled. And I just turned to my manager and said, look, if we're struggling to hire, like I was in loads of interviews all the time, I was writing job descriptions, I was reviewing and debriefs all the time, and we just couldn't find the right person. I was like, I'll just support that team because they need to get going. I'll support that team. So I became this hybrid role, and I was doing work on the website and like setting that team up for success. And then we hired somebody, we put that person in, and we did a handover and all that good stuff. And she's done incredible work with the website now. And I turned to my manager, and I was like, you know what, I really got something out of being an IC or being a hybrid. Like, is there an opportunity for me to like go back to that track and then build my career in that side of things again? He was like, yeah, let's go for it. I think this is going to be great for your career. And it was at the time where I noticed a lot of management folks were doing that. Maybe they sensed something in the industry, because there was a lot of layoffs at the time, and management tends to go around when layoffs happen. So I went in and I supported we had a CRM adjacent product team, and then the referral squad, and now I sort of sit above multiple teams and support multiple teams. But yeah, it's probably one of the best decisions I've made, and it's not like I'm ever not going to be a manager again. Like, I love people, I love working with people, I love growing people and like helping people, because this industry's given me so much. I need to give so much back, and that's why I do stuff like this, because I think it's important. I've had 20 years in this industry, and it's important that I share at least a bit of my experience. Yeah. So, but then to answer your question around like, does management give you like a little bit more of an insight into impact? I definitely think it does, and I definitely recommend, like, if anybody is interested in that sort of like design, strategic thinking, having like that business point, and especially for growth designers who probably need to have that kind of like a bit more business nous about them. Management is a great way to get exposure to that stuff really quickly. So I think I built a lot of relationships, understood how to get like stakeholders, and I understood how to wrangle stakeholders. I understood what motivates, and I could understand, empathize with like the business. So I learned that through my management career, right? So I leveled up my stakeholder management through my management career. So now I've been able to build relationships. I know how to like try different approaches with different stakeholders because of like their personality. I know like this person needs like regular updates because that's who they are. This person probably needs just an inform once a week. And that is the soft skill that you learn being a manager, amongst a load of other things. So yeah, I think it's really informed my career, and maybe one day I'll go back to it. And I definitely encourage anybody who feels like they want more business insight or business strategy, and like, because design, all of that kind of stuff is a whole different world, which is super important about like, have we got the right people in the right places and that kind of stuff. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much for at least taking the time to answer it.
Yeah, and I think if I could go to have a time machine and go back to those early days in my design management career at Monzo, I'd be like, you've still got a point of view and you've still got a skill set that those people don't have. So don't worry about it. Just do what you know is the right thing to do, and believe in yourself. Yeah. Like, you've got this. You've been employed, and people have trusted you. My manager at the time, when I shared my freak out with him, he was like, Nate, we hired you out of those 200 applicants for this job, right? So we hired you. So don't worry about it. Like, you're good. You've passed your probation. And I was like, oh man, yeah, that kind of made me put everything into perspective. When I was like, yeah, I just need to trust myself more. I've got a poster downstairs that says trust yourself. Like, I need to take my own advice sometimes.
Let's take a deep in some of your managerial learnings in terms of how to establish like a growth design function. So if you're to advise like a company right now, what are the fundamental elements they should get right from start when creating a growth design function?
The way that growth design function started at Monzo is I'd learned a lot about through, in fact, this podcast and other podcasts, and learning a bit about it on YouTube and reading a few sort of like blog posts. And I was like, I think growth design is something I can get my teeth into, like this. And this happened back when I was at the co-op, and I was like, this is because I come from roughly a marketing background, and I could see it, and a lot of the terminology resonated with me. And I was like, this is an experimentation. We talked a lot about experimentation at Monzo, but it was different to what I thought it was. Like, experiments were to learn, not always to just de-risk. And that was a distinction that I couldn't get my head around. I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, let me think about this and write about this and talk to other people about like how this function could work. And I wrote some like points down, got some links to blog posts and to other places that do this really well. I think Intercom were there as well. And I knew there was a few people, there's a user researcher, there's a PM who are really interested in this kind of stuff. So I sent it to them, got their thoughts and feedback. And the PM was like, to be honest, I think the CPO would buy into this kind of approach. Like, he's been talking a lot about like, oh, we need to think more about growth. So then I had a one-to-one with him, and I said, look, this is how I see it happening. And he was like, great, when can you set up a team? I was like, I'm not setting up a team. A whole collective. And he's like, yeah, let's go. I was like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And he's like, I'm actually hiring for a growth product director right now. I was like, oh, great, cool. So this is aligned. He's like, yeah. What do you think about growth design? I was like, yeah, well, these are my thoughts. He's like, great, cool, let's go and do it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Obviously, there's like a lot more to and fro in. There's a lot of org design kind of stuff we had to do. I set out my vision for the org design, and much like any other kind of like pitch or proposal, you kind of have to have like your wild one, but your actual one that you want. So I had to develop this vision, and I reflect on that time. I feel like that was the kind of all the ducks kind of like got themselves into the row. Like everything happened, and it was like, okay, well, because he was already thinking about this stuff, I was thinking about this stuff. We had people already that was ready to go with this kind of stuff. If I was to advise other organizations, I think when you develop a growth design org or even a growth product org is the key question. I don't think you could do it too early because you kind of need to find product market fit, and then it might be you can still use the principles of experimentation and optimization, but I feel like setting up a whole growth unit in the early stage startup, I don't know, I've never done it, but probably is not the best time. And then even at the other end of that scale, when you're a fully established organization, like, okay, my experience at the co-op, maybe 5 years there, they probably, their whole proposition is slightly different, right? So it kind of needs to be at that sweet spot of like, you're looking to grow in a very crowded marketplace, and you need to you've already got your product market fit. That's great, but you need to then go, okay, what's the next step? How can we 10x? How can we put rocket fuel, nitro into our organization now, into our business? And that's probably the right time to have a growth design unit. And I would advise, like, rather than hiring a bunch of new people, like, look for the mindsets that already exist within your organization, and then start there rather than going looking out for growth designers. Start with the people who are, obviously most designers do have the growth mindset, but people who are looking at doing stuff, like, who are they've got an experimentation or a hypothesis driven mindset where they're like, and they're not beholden to their ideas. Like, they're like, okay, well, it's less about the idea, it's not about the solution, it's more about the hypothesis. And like, listen out for the languages that they're using. Look out for those people, and then so you might have a designer that looks like that. You might have a PM who speaks like that. You might have a data person that speaks like that, and then bring them people together and go, cool. Like, we've got this part of the funnel. Like, let's see what we can do, and then build out from there. And see if it works, and almost have like a experimentation mindset in your own org design, and just apply that team elsewhere. And I think, like, growth design at Monzo is kind of like a horizontal unit, so we're not like a part of a product vertical or anything like that. We kind of cross between them, and setting that expectation up front is going to be absolutely crucial, because you need to have the trust of the rest of the product org and then the product teams go, this team might actually lean into your world a bit more, and to this one, because you're thinking about customer journeys which cut through product verticals. And it's something that we're looking at applying here now, is like having more of like actually, I won't talk about that, if that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could relate totally, because I think I was in sort of situation like that, and I think having to work cross-functionally with, from customer sources to sales to like every other team that cut across the customer. I think that's a really, really valuable advice. So looking ahead, how do you see the growth design discipline evolve, right? Especially in, like, more companies are getting to recognize the value, and also the AI. Like, how do you see those two things like playing out?
Yeah, let me start with the AI one first. I think AI is going to absolutely revolutionize growth design, and in a very good way, because I think, like, going back to my theme of like pace to learning, like the way I've been applying AI in my workflow has been like, I'm not a motion designer, but I have like emotion. I have thinking with motion and haptics and thinking beyond the screen. AI is really good at going, well, filling in those kind of gaps. So I don't have to brief in a motion or a brand designer, or I don't have to like brief in a prototyper. I can go, AI, help me like visualize this. I mean, a lot of the time, Cursor just gets it wrong. But like, I've, for example, the next iteration of this piece of work that I'm doing right now, I'm like, okay, I want to add some motion, I want to add some delight to it. And me and Cursor just bashed it out in half a day, and it wasn't perfect, but it got the motion right. Yeah, I use Cursor. I don't think it's the most ideal way, but I use Cursor to visualize like a piece of motion with HTML and CSS and like some like front end web technologies, just to get across so it was like this. I had this idea of like the screen fading to black, and then like this like fan of tickets coming out, and I had a very particular vision in my head that I just couldn't get down in Figma. So me and Cursor were just talking back and forth, and it brought it to life. And it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect, but it got the point across. And it's easier to have those conversations with the engineers, because you can have a lot of, when I was talking about the variable reward reveal, we had a lot of back and forth about physics and how the confetti should spread across the screen and that kind of stuff. And that has already started to like cut those conversations down to like, this is how I imagine it to be. I'm not sure like if they can then take that code or those easing principles. I'm sure they can take the same easing principles and then apply it to the code that we use for the app. My next step is, there is a way for me to like actually physically build it within the Monzo code base, which is going to be fun, but like take the prototyping kit that we have in the Monzo code and actually build it within frameworks, but I've not got to that bit yet. So to answer your question, I think AI is going to really, really speed up pace to learning for us, because you get to those conversations, get to those decisions a lot quicker by being able to visualize it better.
I live for this part, because
me too.
so I think Intercom is the first time I've pushed code to production in my entire
Amazing.
career.
Look at
And honestly, Cursor has been just incredible. And we've gone from pushing code to production to now there's a lot of artifacts. I sent one to Manuel the other night. I was using Claude Code to understand WebGL.
Yeah.
And just like particles theory, and like I failed chemistry and physics in school. Okay, I was a purely art kid, but here I am, literally using AI to understand like the concept of particles and how it reacts and what's the right. Like I may not know what the right terms are, but I have a specific vision, like you said, of what things should look like and how it should feel. So yeah, I'm definitely excited. Like I think the possibilities are endless as these tools get better, quite frankly.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's such a complete unlock for design and generally, but I feel like for growth design especially, it's just going to speed us up a lot.
Okay, all right. Oh, this has been so fantastic, Nate. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up with one last question, which is, what is one book that you, off the top of your head, can recommend to anyone? Like if you never read any book for the rest of your life, read this one.
Yeah, so one book that I'm really, really bought into, and I was given this by somebody I mentored so many years ago, and I was like, at the time I wasn't really thinking about growth design or that kind of stuff, and it sat on my bookshelf for a while, and then a couple of people mentioned like how they've learned a lot about how people think and the irrationality of like how people engage with products and services that we design, and they mentioned this book, and I was like, I've got that book and I've not even read it. So I recommend reading Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. So Rory Sutherland is he's like an Ogilvy vice chairman and TED Talk superstar. I've not watched his TED Talk, but I actually saw when I used to work in the advertising industry, he came and gave a talk at the agency I was working at, and he's an old school ad man, right? But he's got some very good points of view on it says it there, the surprising power of ideas that don't make sense. And I feel like that is, especially in this world of AI and growth design and why people choose things. And because people choose Monzo because of the color of their cards sometimes, right?
I did.
There you go. I mean, is that a rational choice, Innie?
Oh.
I don't know. I'm not going to...
Hey, no, I own it.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't rational. I love the card. I was like, yeah, of all the options I had available when I moved to the UK, I'm looking at all of these boring options and I see one bright one and I say, yes, I'll go with that.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of working for a brand like Monzo, is that it kind of gives you permission to do those crazy stuff like blowing confetti off the screen. Of course, some people aren't going to like it. And it usually the older cohorts are of people like, that's not a serious bank. But for some people, that is something that's like, that is cool. I want to be part of that journey with you. And Rory Sutherland talks about people like you and me in it.
I love it. I'm literally on Amazon right now trying to get a pen. So thank you so much, Nick. This has been fantastic. I hope for everyone who is listening that you have enjoyed this as much as we have. More importantly, you can also see how everything all comes together when it comes to like group design and like thinking about just merging craft. I know there's a lot of conversations these days about what craft is or what craft is not, or the importance of craft. I hope that we can begin to think beyond it has been this visual design level of skills that feels unattainable, but more like find ways of it hitting home within the products and brands that we work in and on, to see how it can be like little moments of delight that turn into bigger moments for our customers. It's not necessarily go off to visual design school and go acquire this insane levels of skills. Like, no, we're all just designers trying to figure out how to bring this delightful moments into the day-to-day work that we do.
Yeah.
So it's been fantastic. Until next time, bye.
Lovely.
Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.